You might be wondering, can I take ibuprofen with prednisone? And I'm Dr. Megan, your prednisone pharmacist, here to answer that question for you. Prednisone and ibuprofen, can you do it or not? So the best answer is you should avoid this combination. You should not take prednisone with ibuprofen. But it's a little bit of a nuanced answer, and I'd like to explain more. So prednisone is what we call an anti-inflammatory drug. Ibuprofen and other drugs like it are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So they're both working as anti-inflammatories. They're working in similar pathways in your body to turn down inflammation. And so that can cause a drug interaction, a side effect based on the fact that they're working against each other, duplicating each other's efforts. And so we want to avoid this combination if at all possible. So if you're prescribed prednisone, you should probably just take the prednisone. And if you don't need prednisone, you should probably just take the ibuprofen, unless your doctor says you can take them together. And if you do take them together, I have a few secrets at the end of how we can optimize this for you so that if you have to take them, we figure out the best way. When I was in pharmacy school, they taught us that people on prednisone should take it with food because prednisone can cause stomach upset, such as ulcers, reflux, acid reflux, and a whole bunch of other issues in the gut lining. And we've actually learned recently that it's probably not the problem of taking it with or without food. That's probably not the real problem. It's probably, are you taking prednisone along with an NSAID? That's probably where the damage to the gut lining is. One study showed that using prednisone along with an NSAID means you have a twofold increased risk of a side effect in your GI tract. So it's 2 times more likely that you'll have a GI tract side effect when you're using this combination together. And then they compared people who took 0 drugs, not ibuprofen, not prednisone, nothing, to people who took this combination and discovered that you have a 4 times greater risk if you use this combination of drugs of having increased risk of side effects in the GI tract compared with not using either drug. So it's 4 times more likely you'll have an ulcer or a acid reflux or something from using this than if you never took either drug. We don't want that either. So what can you possibly do? Well, there's a possible way to improve this is if you take something like omeprazole, which is like Prilosec, Prevacid, Dexilant, all of those types of drugs that end in prazole, they can help to possibly counteract this drug interaction side effect. They can protect your gut lining from those ulcers from forming. So if you have to take prednisone and ibuprofen, then you should probably also take this. So you can't, it's probably not best to just take these. You probably need all 3 of these. But there's a secret when it comes to this drug. Most people take it wrong. It's best if you take it about 30 minutes before your biggest meal of the day. The reason is if you take this pill and immediately eat the food, it's not going to work because it needs to do something cool to the gut. Your body, when you put food into your stomach, there's these pumps in your stomach called proton pumps, and they open up in response to food coming in. And this blocks them from opening up, and that blocks the pumps from making acid. So your body needs about 30 minutes for that drug to get there before the food to be able to block the pump. So if you're going to take prednisone and ibuprofen, take this, omeprazole or whatever kind you need, 30 minutes before your biggest meal of the day. And that will help counteract the side effect. I know people have other questions about this side effect. So this drug interaction side effect. You might be wondering, okay, I took prednisone. When can I take ibuprofen? And like I've mentioned, it's best if you don't do this combination. If you have to do this combination, be sure to talk to a doctor or a pharmacist before doing it. Don't just suddenly take ibuprofen without mentioning to your doctor. That's not wise. You need to be in communication, letting them know, hey, I'm still struggling with whatever issue. I need to take ibuprofen. Okay. Then, if you have to take the prednisone and you stop taking prednisone, then you can take your first dose of ibuprofen about 24 hours later, because that's when the prednisone will have completely worn off. So you could take your 8 a.m. dose of prednisone, and then 24 hours later at 8 a.m. again, you could take ibuprofen. That's the safest way to take it if you have to stop taking the prednisone. But what if you're still taking prednisone and you're still in pain? Is there anything that you can do to help? So like I mentioned, it's best to avoid ibuprofen. What other drugs are possibilities? What about Aleve? Aleve is a drug similar to ibuprofen. It's called naproxen. You probably should avoid it too, because it's also an NSAID. So is there anything I can take, Dr. Megan? And yes, acetaminophen is usually safe to be taken along with prednisone. Acetaminophen is also known as Tylenol, right there, compared to Tylenol, extra strength Tylenol. And that's generally safe to be taken along with prednisone, unless you have otherwise health conditions that would prohibit you from taking the Tylenol itself. But the prednisone is generally safe when taken along with acetaminophen. So avoid this combination, and this combination is okay. Be sure to talk to your doctor about it. That's the generally accepted advice when it comes to medical questions, but there's all sorts of exceptions, especially when it comes to prednisone, because there's lots of people in different health statuses. So be sure to check with your doctor. Any other questions with prednisone? So, oh no, I accidentally took prednisone with ibuprofen. What should I do? If you accidentally took ibuprofen after taking prednisone and you just did this one time, it's probably okay. If you took it with food, maybe it's even just fine. But taking this combination long-term can lead to 4 times greater risk of gastrointestinal side effects than otherwise. So it's best to avoid this long-term. But if you just did it one time, it's probably okay. Can I take ibuprofen after finishing prednisone? That would be 24 hours later. Can you take prednisone and ibuprofen in the same day? Technically, yes, you can, but should you? No, it's not the safest option. What about prednisone and Advil? So Advil is the brand name of ibuprofen. Another one is Motrin. And both Advil, Motrin, and ibuprofen are the same thing essentially and should be avoided in combination. More questions include, what if I'm having a cough or a cold? What do I recommend, Dr. Megan? So let me show you some things. My mother-in-law bought these for a cold. Dayquil and NyQuil. I'm not knocking this brand. I'm just knocking the general idea of using combination products. You'll look at the back of this and it has a whole lot of ingredients in there. This one says acetaminophen, dextromethorphan, doxylamine. When it comes to acetaminophen, it has a daily limit of how many milligrams you can take. And so you really don't want to exceed that because it can damage your liver. And if you take Tylenol and then you also take NyQuil with acetaminophen in it, you might inadvertently overdose on Tylenol. And that's not safe for your liver. In addition, these brands aren't consistent with what they put in as those other ingredients. Sometimes it's dextromethorphan, sometimes it's phenylephrine, sometimes it's Sudafed. The other ingredients in here aren't all necessarily safe along with prednisone. And so using something like this, I definitely don't recommend. And a lot of people who use prednisone are older. I mean, there are younger people too, but I'm specifically talking to people over the age of 65. Taking combination products like this isn't generally safe for you because some of the ingredients on there are not safe for people over the age of 65. And they can increase your risk of falls, of getting so dizzy that you fall over, of increasing your risk of having issues with urinating, of getting confused, of not being safe driving. And so I don't recommend combination products as a pharmacist pretty much ever. Just buy the individual ingredient that you need for your symptoms and ask your pharmacist okay, I'm having this symptom. What do you recommend? That's what I'd recommend over this general cold and flu combination product. It's just not the safest, most effective way of dealing with symptoms. So I would go for just the generic acetaminophen, not the brand name Tylenol. You don't need the brand name Motrin, the generic. This is what I buy for my family. It's good. It works. It does the job. And plus, if you get it at Costco, like I do, you can get like a year's supply for like $10. So that's way cheaper than buying these things. And like each box is more than $10 and the ingredients in there aren't worth that much. So, that's how I would deal. If you're struggling on prednisone, you have an infection, you have a fever, you need help, take the acetaminophen. Don't take ibuprofen. And then let's see, any other questions about the prednisone? Finally, I'm going to conclude by reading you a letter somebody wrote to me about this situation. It said, "Thanks for your time this morning, Dr. Megan. I really appreciate you taking my call and discussing prednisone and naproxen. Naproxen is the other drug that's like ibuprofen. I will be picking up omeprazole from Walgreens this morning and then take naproxen later in the afternoon." So that way he's avoiding as many side effects as possible. So if you're taking prednisone, the moral of the story here is avoid ibuprofen if at all possible. If you have to take it, take the omeprazole. And if you can't avoid it, then I would use acetaminophen instead, because it is not an anti-inflammatory drug. That's pretty cool. I didn't explain this and I wanted to. Is these two drugs do very similar things. They both help with fever, and they both help with pain. And that's where the commonalities end. Ibuprofen, on the other hand, also is an anti-inflammatory drug. It does 3 things, whereas Tylenol only does 2. So that's where it's more like prednisone, and acetaminophen is not. So that's why this one is safer along with prednisone when this is not, because it's duplicating that effect of prednisone. So now you understand why acetaminophen is safer than ibuprofen while taking prednisone, and you can now know how to overcome this side effect simply on your own. If you have any other questions about prednisone, I'd love to hear them. And just click the link below. You can get a prednisone checklist to find out how to deal with other side effects from taking prednisone. Signing off is Dr. Megan, your prednisone pharmacist.